Jazeem was arrested. Sorry about that. Can you hear me, please?
Yes.
Yes.
Sanjay, can you ask everyone to mute themselves, because we can hear background disturbances.
Yes, please.
If everyone can mute, please, that will be helpful.
Yeah, thank you. Although it is said that Ahnaf Jazeem was arrested under the PTA, his lawyer has argued that the detention orders under which Ahnaf was detained are illegal, and hence his detention is illegal. So the freedom of expression in general, and the freedom of expression in general, and the media freedom in particular are under immense threat under the present government. Last year, a Muslim social media commentator, Ramzi, was detained for about 5 months under the ICCPR Act before being released on bail. The case against him still continues, and he is suffering from ill health after the cruel, inhuman treatment to which he was subjected during detention. In 2019, the writer Shaktika Sakkumara was arrested and held in detention for about 5 months. We have to note that both the PTA and the ICCPR Act limit judicial supervision, including magisterial discretion to grant magisterial discretion to grant bail. In a recent letter to the IGP, the Inspector General of Police, last week, Sanjaya Wilson Jayasekera, who is a guest today to our event. Last week, Sanjaya Wilson Jayasekera, the legal representation of Ahnaf Jazeem, stated that there is continuing ill treatment of Jazeem by officers of the Terrorism Investigation Division, where he points out that he has been underfed and regularly improperly fed by the TID officers during his integrations. So in this case, that we see that an act of dehumanization taking place generally to the minority communities, especially under this rule after the election of the new president. So dehumanization is a prerequisite for oppression. You can see that from during the 30-year-old war against the Tamil minorities. The Tamils were dehumanized as terrorists who must be destroyed from the country on behalf of the common good of the country. That means the majoritarian Sinhala country. So in that way, we can see that the dehumanization process is taking place in each and every case when the dissent and the minority groups are prosecuted by the state apparatus. So I don't want to take more time. I would like to invite Sanjaya Wilson Jayasekera to start this event with his speech. Sanjay is a legal representation for Jazeem, and he is also a human rights activist and actively in the actions against the human rights violations in Sri Lanka. So Sanjay, can you hear me?
Yes, yes. Thank you very much. Good evening, everybody. I think you can hear me. You can hear me, no?
Yes, we can hear me.
Right,
I can hear you, Sanjay, but I hope all can hear Sanjay, no?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So I may continue. Right. In fact, thank you for giving this and organizing this event and giving this opportunity. And At the same time, I should express that I'm speaking today upon your invitation on behalf of my client. I'm as his legal representative, my client poet Ahnaf Jazeem, and also at the same time, I'm also representing the Action Committee for the Defense of Freedom of Art and Expression, where I'm presiding. I'm representing that as the president of the Action Committee and also as a member of the political committee of the Socialist Equality Party. And I would like to express my views and regarding my topic, the arrest and detention of poet Ahnaf Jazeem, and also some remarks about the Prevention of Terrorism Act, and most importantly, the way out and how we can ensure that Ahnaf's release is secured. So that's why. So I will be dealing with those issues. And friends, good evening. So after about 4 years, almost 4 years before, when poet Ahnaf Jazeem launched his first anthology of poetry, Terrorism, at a grand ceremony held in village school, attended to by many distinguished guests and poetry lovers, our poet could never have had even a fancy of a dream that he would have to perish the prime years of his youth in a prison cell just because of the same well-received work of art. Having written poetry advancing social harmony, advocating peace, empathy, and in praise of God within inverted commas, as a young aspiring poet of a poor rural family of a day laborer, it would have been his most innocent wish that he would be receiving much recognition and his literary work would be much appreciated by the society. At the time when Ahnaf was arrested by Sri Lanka police on 16th May 2020 at his home upon an allegation of propagating Muslim extremism, which he would never have thought of, handcuffs and put in a police jeep along with all remaining copies of his poetry book and other books from his shelf and carried to Colombo in a dark evening, he should have deeply felt that all these hopes were evaporating. By now it is well known, and I am sure that everyone who attends this meeting is well aware of the circumstances of Ahnaf's arrest, continued detention, and the steps we have been taking in his defense, legally and most importantly, politically. When Ahnaf was unlawfully arrested, Sri Lanka Police Counter-Terrorism and Investigation Division, well known as TID, initially alleged that he was suspected of having published books on and taught his students extremism and racism. He was unlawfully detained and is continuously put under TID custody based upon purported detention orders, the validity of which we have challenged in courts. 1 month after his arrest, the Criminal Investigation Department, the CID, reported facts against the poet to Fort Magistrate Court on the same allegations. After having obtained a damning scientific report from psychiatrists upon this literary work, since 3rd March this year, the CID has expressly concluded its proceedings against the poet in that case. The TID initiated its case against Ahnaf on 11th December last year. In the Chief Magistrate Court of Colombo, TID cites several provisions of 2 infamous legislations, the Prevention of Terrorism Act, also called PTA, number 48 of 1979, and International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, which could be referred to as ICCPR Act, number 56 of 2007, in reporting facts against Ahnaf and alleging that Ahnaf, the suspect, has been involved in activities such as directing individuals to Muslim extremist terrorist activities, aiding and abetting them, and concealing such information from the security forces, obstructing the reconciliation in Sri Lanka, engaging in activities that endanger public peace, and thereby committing offences under sections 3A, 3B, 5A, 5B of the PTA, and under section 3, 1 and 2 of the ICCPR Act. Both these acts, the PTA and ICCPR Act, have been used throughout the past to silence and suppress dissent, writers and political opponents by succeeding governments. This case was last called on the 2nd March 2021, that is the TID case, and the court refused to hear the defense on the basis that the TID has filed the case only for the limited purpose of facilitating the detainee to make a statement to the court under section 127 of the Criminal Procedure Code, which provides that any magistrate may record any statement made to him at any time before the commencement of any inquiry or trial. Though we disagree with this legal position, the case is currently laid by indefinitely, permitting the TID to make an application to court by way of motion within inverted commas when suitable circumstances are ready to produce the person to court. Close inverted commas. Friends, we know that what the TID is now doing is preparing these within inverted commas suitable circumstances, close commas, by ill-treating and imposing duress upon Ahnaf, treating him inhumanely and degradingly in various ways, to intimidate and force him to give the most self-incriminating statement, admitting to a fact which the TID already knows as per the B report filed in the magistrate court. As per the B report filed in the magistrate court, it is itself manifest that the TID wants the poet to admit that during his period of education at Jamia Nalimia Institute, a well-known prestigious Muslim academic institution, he was exposed to Muslim extremism, got interested in activities of ISIS, terrorist organization, and consequently resorted to extremist ideologies, which Ahnaf has continuously, I reiterate, continuously denied as false and refused to admit. We also know that he is forced to admit that while working as a teacher, he taught student extremism, which too Ahnaf has denied as false. We also know that the allegation that the poetry book Navarazam contains ideas promoting Muslim extremism or violence is flatly rejected as false by experts on Tamil language and literature. These are all facts available before you all, my friends, which I have reason to believe you all know well. Like public security ordinance and emergency regulations, the PTA is such a draconian piece of legislation always resorted to by Sri Lanka government to detain suspects, most viciously during and after the 26-year racist war against Tamil people, and significantly after the 2019 Easter Sunday terrorist attacks against the Muslim community of the country. According to section 16 of the Act, confessions made while in detention and during the investigation would be admissible during the trial as evidence against a suspect, unless it is proved that the same was given under duress, which high burden falls upon the suspect. The PTA contains no express provision for bail, and once produced to court under section 7 thereof, a detainee has to be sentenced till the conclusion of the trial against him. Ahnaf is not yet produced to court under this section. If Ahnaf is indicted upon these alleged offences under PTA and the ICCPR Act, and the same is proved against him, he faces the risk of being sentenced to a period between 5 to 20 years of imprisonment. The fundamental rights application filed on behalf of Ahnaf is to be supported in the Supreme Court when the conditions permit us so soon. Friends, it is now very clear that for us, it is very clear for us that the poet's arrest and continued detention are arbitrary and unlawful because all allegations against him are unfounded and there was no reason or probable cause for his arrest. We have pointed out in our fundamental rights petition and in the petition launched by the Action Committee for the Defense of Freedom of Art and Expression, ACDAE, that the poet's arrest and detention is an anti-democratic act which infringes, among other rights, the poet's right to freedom of expression and art. The FR petition specifically states that the arrest of poet Ahnaf Jazeem was motivated purely by extraneous political reasons and compulsions in order to capitalize on the Easter Sunday attacks and to feed a vicious racist campaign against the citizens of the Mohammedan faith and thereby to divide and rule the people of the country. Now the question before us is, how is Ahnaf released? How is Ahnaf's release ensured? That is our question before us. Let me say that this question is adequately responded only if the causes and circumstances under which Ahnaf was arrested are properly analyzed and understood. This analysis was presented only by the World Society website, the official international publication of the International Committee of the Fourth International. In an article published on 20th December 2020 in WSW's unreservedly opposing Ahnaf's detention, the Socialist Equality Party, the Sri Lanka section of the ICFI, explained as follows. The Rajapaksa government is deliberately promoting divisive communalism and anti-democratic attacks on writers as it confronts the rising working class struggles against its big business policies, its grossly inadequate response to the COVID-19 pandemic, and moves towards a military-based presidential dictatorship. The purpose of this historical anti-Muslim campaign, endorsed by opposition parties, the article explained, is to divide and weaken the working class. Ahnaf is the latest victim of the government's anti-Muslim witch hunt, it explained. In its statement published in the WSWS on 16 February, calling working people to rally around it to defend Ahnaf, the Action Committee explained the circumstances under which this continued anti-Muslim witch hunt is being waged. Faced with an unprecedented economic and political crisis, President Rajapaksa, from the very inception, serving the interest of capitalist big business, was consolidating a presidential dictatorship broadly based on the military. His government openly declared an economic war against the working class. The situation aggravated when in March last year, the COVID-19 pandemic hit the island. In this backdrop, Rajapaksa government's witch hunt against writers, journalists, social media activists, in a heightened form, a continuation of the policies of Sri Lanka government, which reinitiated a deadly racist campaign against Muslims after the Easter Sunday terrorist attacks, supported by ultra-right Sinhala Buddhist factions. In the same manner, the Rajapaksa government is continuing its racist witch hunt against the Tamil community, strengthening its military occupation in the areas of Northeast since the end of war, arresting youth and terrorizing local media and journalists, often quoting alleged national security threats. Last November, the Valachani police arrested a journalist named Kokilan Dasan, also known as Gokulan, under regulations issued in 2011 under the PTA to proscribe the Liberation Tigers of Tamil Eelam, LTT, on bogus allegations of promoting the LTT and its sane leader. He is yet in remand for more than 6 months without any formal charge being filed against him in court. Historically, racism has been an effective tool of capitalist class rule to divide and derail the working people from their united class struggles against capitalist rule. Its austerity measures and its anti-democratic and counter-revolutionary onslaught against the working people and the poor. Raising a national security threat issue allegedly posed by an ethnic community is the most vicious form of this racist campaign. It is this very tool that the Sirisena Wickremesinghe government and now the Rajapaksa government have been utilizing against the Muslim ethnic minority, attempting to cultivate single chauvinism against them. Discrimination on the basis of race, religion, language, or any other identity is the essential manifestation of government-sponsored racist campaigns intended to divide the working class on ethnic and other identity lines, to suppress united class struggles, especially at times of economic and political crisis. Ethnic discrimination is therefore essentially a product of capitalism and its class system. This phenomena is not unique to the capitalist rule of Sri Lanka during the 73-year period since the formal transfer of power to local bourgeoisie by the British imperialism, which is celebrated by the ruling class every year as so-called independence. This is an international phenomenon. From the United States, Brazil, United Kingdom, Germany, France to India, and in many other developing countries around the world, what is daily observed is the militant working class struggles rising against the government's austerity measures, criminal and reckless responses to the global pandemic causing millions of deaths, against militarism and preparations for imperialist wars. On the other hand, governments around the world are consolidating authoritarianism and dictatorship to counter these class struggles. These manifest the essential principle that democratic rights, therefore, are essentially incompatible with the parasitic capitalist profit system, its class system, and unprecedented global inequality. Leon Trotsky, the co-founder of the Great Russian Revolution and the founder of the Fourth International, in his theory of permanent revolution, brilliantly explained this fact. He wrote, with regard to countries with a belated bourgeois development, like those in South Asia, the theory of the permanent revolution signifies that the complete and genuine solution of their task of achieving democracy and national emancipation is conceivable only through the dictatorship of the proletariat as the leader of the subjugated nation. The fight against racism, ethnic discrimination, inequality, dictatorship, and for democratic rights is therefore essentially bound up with the abolition of this parasitic profit system and oppressive class system by revolutionary struggles of the oppressed masses led by the working class. Based on the above fundamental political understanding, it is only the Action Committee for the Defense of Freedom of Art and Expression, the Socialist Equality Party, and the World Socialist website that have unequivocally declared that Ahnaf is a political prisoner, and his arrest and detention is fundamentally a political act necessitating a political fight to defend him and democratic rights. Action Committee is waging a broad political campaign to defend Ahnaf and secure his release based on the political program that Ahnaf's release is ensured only by a broad and united political fight against this arrest and assault on democratic rights by the working class of the island and internationally, cutting across all ethnic or racial divisions, rallying youth, artists, intellectuals, and all those who value democratic rights around them based on the program of international socialism. The online public petition launched by the Action Committee to mobilize the masses around the political perspective and demand Ahnaf's immediate release, dropping of all criminal proceedings against him, and full compensation for the suffering caused to him, has gained much public support within advanced section of the urban working class and the intelligentsia, and this campaign needs to reach a broader section of the masses. The Action Committee was established in August 2019 as part of International Committee of the Fourth International Perspective and SCP's principled fight to defend freedom of expression of the working class, freedom of journalism and other democratic rights, to rally broad mass support for the demands of the freedom of writer Shaktika Satkumara, who was anti-democratically arrested for posting a short story in his Facebook and remanded for 4 months to satisfy the racist Sinhala Buddhist factions. His release was secured in the backdrop of international public campaign initiated and propagated by the Action Committee. Even 1 year after poet's unlawful arrest and detention, the TID has not concluded their so-called investigation and no indictment has been filed against him. In an attempt to extract, they use methods of intimidation as usual in an attempt to extract forced confessions from him to prove their concocted case against the poet. The Action Committee demanded the immediate release of Ahnaf and all other political prisoners, including journalists and social media activists like Gokulan, an immediate cessation of all unlawful criminal proceedings against them. Friends, while thanking all those who have supported the public petition and its perspective and urging you all to encourage your contacts to do the same and issue protest statements, I call upon all those attending this meeting to join the Action Committee, build its branches at your localities, and wage our fight forward for the defense of democratic rights. I also urge, most importantly, the necessity to be politically educated and therefore request from you all to study the program and the perspective of International Committee of the Fourth International, daily read the World Socialist website, and join the fight for international socialism. Thank you, my friends. Audio memo.
Santosh, your microphone is mute.
Thank you, Sanjaya, for that in-depth and insightful speech. I think we can have more. We can talk more about the present situation during the discussion. There will be a 1 hour discussion after the panel talks. So the next, I would like to invite our next speaker, Rasma Ramzi, who is reading LLB at University of Peradeniya. She's an aspiring writer and actively participates in discussions pertaining to issues of women and minorities. So, Rasma, could you please proceed with the speech? Yeah. Rasma, are you there?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yeah, okay. Hi, Assalamualaikum. Good evening, everyone. Let me start the conversation with a biblical story of the Exodus. I don't read Bible. I got this excerpt from the internet. Looking over Egypt, which was exponentially growing in population, Pharaoh becomes fearful of people. He did not fear migrant labor. Rather, he feared a mixed multitude of Israelites and impoverished Egyptians. Therefore, he said, "Look at the Israelite people. They are numerous and more powerful than we. Come, let's deal shrewdly with them, or they will increase, and in the event of a war, they will join our enemies, fight against us, and escape from the land. Truly, power structure fear the multiracial, cross-class collective outrage. Therefore, they invent the fear over the other. By ghettoizing and marginalizing the minorities, the states always maintain a stratification of its people. And in Sri Lankan context, the stratification works in the form of ethnicizing the community. There will always be a dominant ethnic group with siege mentality against minority ethnic groups. It was evident in the Civil War. In fact, even before that, and I quote the Prime Minister SWRD Bandaranaike here, if parity is granted, it will mean disaster to the Sinhalese race. Tamils with their language and culture and the will and strength characteristic to their race would come to exert their dominant power over us, he says. Look at how the fear is implanted by generalizing a characteristic to a particular race and making them all potential enemies to the dominant race. And on what basis does the fear is being cultivated? The other has been conventionally seen as a threat to the one. The not one of us rhetoric, which is manifested through othering, creates a system of exclusion and therefore makes a person inferior or less of a human person. This act of casting a collective identity into a demonized basket gives the superiority that allows to vilify the other. That vilification can lead to calamities in the forms of territorial disputes, sectarian violence, and military conflicts, and so on. Racial profiling of Tamil civilians who were trapped in the war zone in the last stages of war, that racial profiling was considered them as all the Tamil civilians as tigers. That very thing enabled the military to carry out a genocide and later swept it under the carpet, telling they were collateral damages. To come to this stage, first, the particular race has to be vilified and stripped out of their humanness. Muslims' case is quite obvious, I think. Following the 9/11 attacks, Muslims started to come to the forefront of media. Religious motives were cited for criminal attacks and nature of the religion was questioned. Even before that, even before the 9/11 attacks, Arabs were portrayed as barbarians in white robes, rich and filthy, who abuse young boys. And it happens in the global south as pretty much same, like backward Muslims as backward and deny the young woman of their education sort of things. But the terrorizing picture was brewing in post 9/11 world. Farid Isaac says Islamophobia as an apparatus can travel without a context and find its meaning and produce subjects without the trace of its earlier inception in a particular setting to make it an exercise of power. What I understood from this is you don't have to be a survivor of any attacks which deemed to be perpetrated by so-called Muslim terrorists to be an Islamophobic. Islamophobia as an apparatus has the capacity to control and model the subjects it concerns. Easter Sunday attacks emerged as a triggering point to this reality. It gave a material context within which Islamophobia can be further traveled. A fringe of the Muslim community who were indoctrinated with self-fulfilling prophecies were made as the reality of the whole Muslim community. Anybody who exposes Muslim cultural and religious identities are now considered ticking time bombs who are waiting to blow themselves. This criminal profiling of the entire community works as the undertone of the mass incarceration after Easter Sunday attacks. Ahnaf Jazeem is a poor victim of that. For the government, which is instrumentalizing this project, he becomes just another collateral image when he is proven not guilty, when even he is proven not guilty. Nobody's going to talk about how he was incarcerated or for how long he has been in prison after he got released. Also, for those who say his poetry is anyway patriarchal and just preach women how to and how not to behave, for the record, even if they are not intending to sideline the core of the argument, which is the infringement of the freedom of expression, I would like to add this here. We don't have to outsource the authority to punish patriarchy to the state, which is indeed in itself patriarchal. Apart from the obvious impacts of racial criminal profiling of a particular community, I would like to add one more thing to that. I gained this perspective from Hamid Dabashi, who said, and I quote here, "The Taliban as a Muslim-related metaphor was one of the episodes in the recent history of global metaphor making. It has evolved into a state where any form of religiously inspired political expression from the side of the Muslims that is unfavorable to the nationalist imagination is named Talibanism. This very fear of Muslims to express their religious and political positions instead made them to assimilate into mainstream by making Weser lanterns and in worst cases support niqab ban and related fear-based policies. And this usage of global metaphor Talibanization impedes the reformative critiques within Muslim community. I came to this conclusion after the controversy of Muslim Majlis of state universities, where they did not post the Muslim women's photos in social media platforms, claiming it to be inappropriate. The voices came within the Muslim community against their position. However, later the subject was turned as whether Muslim majlises become Talibanized and netizens started spewing hatred saying, "Not in our universities, not in our country." Things like this, I think, hinder the reformative critiques come from within the community. And the worst case scenario is sometimes they are vilified by the very Muslim community. As Farid Isaac says, Islamophobic metaphors thus deny the right of self-expression for Muslims as social agents and political subjects. And honestly, I don't think that piecemeal reforms such as police accountability or judicial intervention of that sort would address the demonology of minorities. The synonymity of Muslims with terrorism will still facilitate surveillance, sting operations, extrajudicial killings, and racialized enforcement of criminal and national security laws. In this scenario, fundamental rights like freedom of expression, freedom against torture and degrading treatment, freedom from arbitrary or illegal detention, and principles like presumption of innocence mean nothing. Here, it only exists as presumption of criminality. Thank you. Hello, Santosh brother.
Thank you, Rasma. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, thank you very much, Rasma, for that speech. I think we can have a discussion during our discussion session, and I think we can exchange our opinions with the others. Okay, I would like to call our next speaker, Bashana Abeywardane. He's speaking under the title of A Poet Behind Bars, National Security and Constructing Counter-Terrorist Narratives. So Bashana, Bashana entered political activism at the age of 17, and he started his writing. Started as a writer, as a poet and a writer, and this is he entered journalism in 1992. Bashana currently lives in exile since 2006. So I think it's very relevant to introduce Bashana today to speak about the poet who is behind the bar. So Bashana, can you hear me?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, Bashana.
Yeah. Thank you, Santosh. I will basically speak about the concept of national security, as well as the counter-terror narrative, which is being promoted and constructed and promoted by the state in relation to the case of Ahnaf Jazeem. So good evening to all. Thank you for having me for this important discussion. So my gratitude goes to the organizers of this event. And for me, just as for anyone in the group I represent, which is Journalists for Democracy in Sri Lanka, it is a matter of utmost importance for being able to share our position and extend our solidarity to the campaign that demands unconditional release of Ahnaf Jazeem. And before moving further, at the onset, I should also express my sincere gratitude to two important individuals who pushed Ahnaf Jazeem's case onto the surface, because it has been taken up by many others, which could have otherwise remained in complete darkness. Those two individuals are Vajra Chandrasekhara and Rohan Gunawira, whose coordinated effort made a huge impact in highlighting the injustice in the first place that was committed against an innocent Muslim being. Having emphasized that, I would like to move on to the particular task that I have been assigned with, which is to share some thoughts in brief on the relevance of the so-called national security and the construction of the counter-terror narrative. Although I'm not intending to describe the background to his unlawful arrest and detention, which has already been lucidly and extensively done by Sanjaya Wilson, let me share certain information that is relevant to explain my position on the matter in a nutshell. Ahnaf Jazeem was arrested more than 1 year ago on the 16th of May 2020. According to the B report submitted to the court of the Counter-Terrorism and Investigation Division, which was subsequently made public by his attorney Sanjay, Ahnaf was arrested for committing offences that fall under the Draconian Prevention of Terrorism Act and ICCPR Act, that include disrupting peace and reconciliation in the country by guiding individuals towards or leading individuals towards Muslim extremist terrorism, while aiding and abetting such acts and concealing such information from the security officials. And I am actually quoting the translated kind of version of this B report. And how and when did he do all this? Now, according to the B report, he did all this by publishing a book of poetry in 2017 and taking up a job as a Tamil language teacher at a school in Madurankulliya 2 years later in July 2019. And this is all what he did. As it is being detailed in the fundamental rights petition filed on his behalf, he left his workplace in Madurankulliya in March 2020 as the school was closed due to the COVID-19 restrictions that came into effect in the same month. The events that unfolded since then do not need to be repeated because it has been explained, and also it has been in the public domain for people to read and understand. So what lies at the heart of this official narrative, which transformed an unknown Muslim youth into a dreaded terrorist, is that is being put forward by the state and its defense establishment, is a fact that this Muslim youth hailing from a remote village in the northern part of the island had been involved in plotting a sinister plan by publishing an anthology of poetry that would have threatened peace in Ireland and thereby the so-called national security. Now, we have been living with this idea of national security at least since 70s, if I am not wrong. Hence, Ahnaf Jazeem had to be locked up and detained indefinitely until he decides to confess and admit his responsibility to the offenses that is being accused of committing. Now, the only compromising point for Ahnaf's freedom, according to the terms that is laid by the state, is for him to admit to the offenses that he's been accused of committing and then admit the guilt that he is actually part of this great terror plot. Now let's deal with the central argument which is being used to legitimize this injustice. And as you all know, Ahnaf Jazeem's free existence may pose a threat to peace and stability and thereby national security of the country. Now, apart from individual dimension of the crime committed against an innocent Muslim youth, Ahnaf's case crystallizes an inherent repressive and exclusionary character of the state we live in. If people had found it difficult to realize through the decade-long genocidal oppression unleashed against the Tamils during India. Now, Ahnaf provides another window to look at this atrocious nature of the character of the state, a process of which, as far as the Tamils are concerned, the genocidal process of which military culmination was marked in 2009 and celebrated by the flag-waving crowds dancing on the streets of Colombo. The magnitude of the injustice committed against individuals like Ahnaf Jazeem and attorney Hijaz Hizbullah reflects the obscene underbelly of Sri Lanka's long celebrated democracy, regardless of the fact who rules, whether it is the United National Party or the Sri Lanka Freedom Party or any other party or alliance or coalition that comes, bringing all these parties together. That is its structural incapability to transform itself into an inclusive entity that is based on principles of economic and racial equality and social justice. So we need to understand the fact it is not that the state's unwillingness to transform itself, but actually structural incapability to transform itself into a more democratic, inclusive entity. And Ahnaf Jazeem fell victim to this incapability, just like Hijaz Hizbullah and just like hundreds and thousands of Tamils and Muslims, and also some of the less privileged Sinhala classes actually. However, this incapability inevitably highlights a structural mismatch between the state's claims for legitimacy and its mode of governance. Now, there's a structural mismatch between this mode of governance and claims of legitimacy. Here, the concept of national security becomes an important tool that can be utilized to conceal this mismatch. And national security is important basically to cover up this mismatch, to cover up the real predatory ethnocratic character of the state, and to project it as an exceptional behavior demanded by the requirements of an exceptional state of affairs in exceptional times. Now, here lies an important window to understand the fundamental character of the Sri Lankan state. As we know, according to German jurist, famous, who was actually celebrated by the fascist Carl Schmitt, a state of exception basically means the sovereign's ability to transcend the rule of law in the name of the public good. In that sense, the so-called rule of law is not a pillar of stability, but an obstacle that needs to subjugate and overcome by the state. So when we apply this Carl Schmitt's idea to Sri Lanka, in Sri Lanka's recent history, state of exception has been the default form of the state, which is determined to violate its own rules of governance in order to maintain its authority over its subjects. Now, if you look at the history of Sri Lanka since 70s, a larger period has been actually ruled under emergency laws and draconian anti-terror laws. And this, in a country like in Latin America or East Asia, you need an exceptional state made up by military generals to rule the country and to take the country along this road, and then mark a rupture and to say that now we have a civilian government and we will look into the governance, the crimes that were committed by this exceptional state, which has happened in many other countries. But in Sri Lanka, we never needed a dictator we never needed military generals to form a military junta to carry out any of these atrocities since 1970s, from the very first uprising of 1971. And the killings that we are referring to in numbers amounts to 20,000, 60,000, 100,000, and even more. But this was done while the regular elections were being held, while a multi-party, so-called multi-party democracy was in function, and also certain democratic spaces have been, not while this is according to the government's version, have been preserved. But actually in any other country in the world, as far as I know, such atrocities, mass atrocities, was not possible without making a clear rupture from the civilian form of governance to a military governance, or a government that was run by a dictator. But here comes the problem. But why this contradiction? The contradiction remains invisible to many until they fall victims to this predatory nature of the state. And many, until they fall victims to this predatory nature of the state, don't realize this contradiction exists. Here, understanding the relevance of the concept of national security plays a role that of paramount importance. The doctrine of national security provides an essential cover to conceal this profound contradiction, lies at the heart of the state. As a result of this, the state criminality, which has always been the elephant in the room, had enjoyed the privilege of being invisible to many who are not standing at the receiving end as immediate victims. Like what we see in 2009, like what we saw before that, and what is happening to the Muslims right now. Hence, the false belief of national security offers a convenient springboard for a dysfunctional repressive state to mobilize the consent of the masses to subject themselves into enormous atrocities by taking turns. So it will be the turn of the Sinhalese, it can be the turn of Tamils and the Muslims, but the element of invisibility plays an important role in legitimizing the oppression unleashed by the state. This invisibility is the contradiction that we don't see. And that has been covered by national security, and we all endorse that national security concept. And therefore, we willingly become victims of not seeing it by our own choice. The state's counter-terror narrative is actually built upon this invisibility of its predatory character, and which is actually the source of violence unleashed against its subjects along the lines of racial and class divisions. Now, this is made possible due to ethnicized understanding of the concept of sovereignty. And Sri Lanka's sovereignty has always been an ethnicized concept. The Sinhalese, the majority community of the Sinhalese, has always understood the idea of sovereignty as an exclusively Sinhala Buddhist right to rule the country. So whatever that lies beyond that becomes a justifiable, a legitimate target of which the state's violence. And let me break this into simple chain of events based on their functional duties in the context of Ahnaf Jazeem's case. Now, as we know now, Ahnaf's arrest was accidental and a clear reflection of the desperation of the counter-terror officials who were trying hard to justify the unlawful arrest and detention of attorney Hijaz Hizbullah in the broad context of persecuting the Muslim community. The extreme fragility of the constructed terrorism narrative against Hijaz and the non-existence of evidence to incriminate him in any terror act led them to Ahnaf, who was nobody in the eyes of majority in the country. Ahnaf was hailing from a remote area, and he was doing a job which is not known far away from the capital Colombo, and not sharing a kind of social life with powerful or the kind of influential people in the country. And therefore his vulnerability lies in the fact that he actually belongs to a community that is being neglected, that is living beyond the concerns of the Colombo-based liberals. The only possible way to conceal obvious loopholes in the story is to bring in the concept of national security. and linking an unknown poet to a known narrative of terrorism. So that is what happened with Ahnaf. Ahnaf was an unknown poet known to a certain number of people who read Tamil and who used to visit his blog. But connecting him to a known narrative of terrorism can be only done by connecting his Muslimness to the acts of terrorism. So there's a default belief that the Muslims are by default terrorists, just like the way that it was been seen during the time of the Tamil struggle. The Tamils were seen as potential terrorists unless they proved otherwise. So it's completely turning the principle of law on its head. Anyone is proven guilty, like anyone is innocent until they are proven guilty, and which is a principle that is being completely turned around in Sri Lanka. Everyone in the sense, everyone, I mean, belongs to the Tamil community or the Muslim community, can be guilty unless they are proven innocent. So Ahnaf is the victim of this policy of the state that has been perpetuated since at least since 1948. And as a result of it, what we have now is the less concerns about Ahnaf and less concerns about more than 700 Muslims who have been detained under the PTA. And even the numbers or the names remains invisible and unknown to many of the people, even for the people who are concerned about the plight of these people. So in that sense, we have to take back look back at the idea of national sovereignty, national security, as well as the idea of terrorism, the counter-terrorism. These two narratives are actually, the concept and the narrative is being completely constructed and controlled by the state. And that is where Ahnaf could not make his voice heard. And fortunately, I mean, people like Sanjaya Wilson and his team of lawyers has come forward to fight for Ahnaf's freedom. And that has opened the space to a certain extent, even for this discussion to happen. So having basically shared my thoughts on these two concepts, I would like to join the Q&A session if there are any questions on the matter. Thank you very much again.
Thank you, Bashana. Thank you very much. I think we can have during the discussion, we can go further and have a discussion. Yes, next, next, I would like to invite Mr. AGM Jazeem, father of the poet Ahnaf Jazeem, to share his thoughts and feelings with us. AGM Jazeem. He'll be talking in Tamil, and our friend Ashir Mohammed will be translating it into English. Jazeem, ஐயா இருக்கிறீங்களா? கேக்குதா?
கேக்குதா?
கேக்குது.
அஸ்ஸலாமு அலைக்கும். வணக்கம். ஐபோன் என்னோட மகண்ட விஷயமா பேசிக்கொண்டு இருக்கின்றீங்க. அதில் நானும் கலந்து கொண்டிருக்கேன். முதல்ல கடவுளுக்கு போல அனைத்தையும் கூறியிருக்கும். கடவுள் அந்த வல்லவனுடைய பெயரை கொண்டும் வல்லவனுடைய அருளை கொண்டும் பேசுவதற்கும் எனக்கு உதவி செய்ய வேண்டும். நான் கூடுதலாக பேச தெரியாது, இருந்தாலும் என்னுடைய மகன் விஷயமா பேச வேண்டியிருக்கும். எங்களோட மகன் நல்ல ஒரு பிள்ளை, என்ற பிள்ளைகளிலே மூத்தவர். அவருடைய பெயர் அஹ்னப். அஹ்னப் என்றால் நேர்வழி நடப்பவர். அப்ப நேர்வழி நடக்கக்கூடிய பிள்ளையாத்தான் நான் என்னுடைய பிள்ளைக்கு பேர் பார்த்து வைத்தேன். அந்த பிள்ளை என்னுடைய பிள்ளையை அது மட்டுமல்ல, இந்த நாட்டுக்கோர் நல்ல பிள்ளையாக, என்னுடைய பிள்ளைகள் எல்லாம் நல்ல பிள்ளையாக வர வேண்டும் என்ற நல்ல நோக்கத்தில் என்னுடைய பிள்ளைகளை, எல்லா பிள்ளைகளையும் நல்ல பிள்ளைகளாகவே வளர்த்திருக்கின்றேன். என்னுடைய பிள்ளை அது மட்டுமல்ல, அவர் மூத்தவர். என்னுடைய பிள்ளைகளில் மூத்தவர். இன்றைக்கு என்னுடைய மகன் இந்த நாட்டுக்கு செய்த காரியங்களில் நல்ல காரியத்தை செய்திருக்கிறார். அவருடைய கவிதை புத்தகம் நவரசம் என்ற ஒரு கவிதை புத்தகத்தை எழுதியிருக்கிறார். அந்த கவிதை புத்தகத்திலே நீங்கள் படித்திருப்பீர்கள், பெரும்பாலானவர்கள் படித்திருப்பீர்கள் என்று நினைக்கின்றேன். எனக்கு ஒரு 10 நிமிஷமாவது தர வேண்டும். படித்திருப்பீர்கள் என்று நினைக்கின்றேன். அந்த கவிதை புத்தகத்திலே நீங்கள் பாருங்கள், அவருடைய கவிதை புத்தகத்திலே ஒரு கவிதை எழுதியிருக்கிறார். ஒரு வாக்கு என்ற கவிதையிலே அதிலே கூறியிருக்கிறார், ஒரு துவக்கை படமாக போட்டு, நான் அந்த படத்தையும் காட்டுகிறேன் பாருங்கள். இதுதான் அந்த படம், இதுதான் அந்த படம். அவர் உருவாக்கு என்ற கவிதை தான் அந்த கவிதை. அதிலே எழுதியிருக்கிறார், யார் இந்த துவக்கை படமாக போட்டு இந்த துவக்கை தூக்காதீர்கள் என்றுதான் போட்டிருக்கிறார். அப்ப என்னுடைய மகனுக்கு அந்த அரசாங்கம் அல்லது இந்த உலகத்தில் உள்ளவர்கள் அவருக்கு ஒரு அவார்டு கொடுக்க வேண்டும். தூக்கும் துவக்கு அது தாக்கும் நமக்கு, தீக்கும் நமக்கு. துவக்கிலார் போர் துவக்கு அது எழுத்திலே இருக்கு. வெள்ளப்பெருக்கு குருதி பெருக்கு எனும் அவதிப்பெறும் மனிதனுக்கு அள்ளி கொடுத்து அயலாருடன் வாழப்பழகு என்ற கவிதை வரிகள் எங்கேயாவது ஒரு தீவிரவாதத்தை ஊக்குவிக்குதா, தீவிரவாதத்துக்கு ஏதாவது துணை போகுதா என்பதை சற்று அறிவுள்ளவர்கள், படித்தவர்கள், இந்த நாட்டு ஜனாதிபதி, பிரதமர் ஒவ்வொருவரும் படித்த ஒவ்வொருவரும் இதை கணம் உற்று நோக்கி பாருங்கள். இந்த புத்தகத்தில் எவ்வளவு அர்த்தங்களை கொண்ட புத்தகமாக என்னுடைய மகன் படித்து எழுதியிருக்கிறார். ஒவ்வொன்றிலையும் அவருடைய ஒவ்வொரு கவிதைகளும் ஒவ்வொரு தத்துவங்களை சொல்லி நிற்கின்றது. என்னுடைய மகனுடைய புத்தகத்தை இன்னைக்கு ஏன் தடை செய்ய இல்லாமல் இருக்கின்றார்கள்? அவருடைய புத்தகம் தத்துவத்துக்கு மேல் தத்துவத்தை கூறியிருக்கின்றது. நான் என்னுடைய மகனுடைய புத்தகத்தை படிக்கவில்லை. என்னுடைய மகனை அரெஸ்ட் பண்ணி கொண்டு போய்க்க பிறகுதான் என்னுடைய மகனுடைய புத்தகத்தை நான் நூர்ந்து படித்தேன். அதன் பிறகுதான் படித்தேன். என்னுடைய மகன் இவ்வளவு ஒரு ஆழமாக எழுதியிருக்கிறார். இன்னைக்கு என்னுடைய மகனுக்கு இந்த அரசாங்கம் அவார்டு கொடுக்க வேண்டும், பெரிய ஒரு கௌரவத்தை கொடுக்க வேண்டும். ஆனால் என்னுடைய மகனுக்கு இன்னைக்கு சிறையில் சோறு இல்லாமல் வைத்திருக்கின்றார். சிறையில் அவருக்கு 26 வயது. அப்ப அவருக்கு எவ்வளவு அழகா சோறு சாப்பாடு கொடுக்க வேண்டும், அவர் சாப்பிட வேண்டும். அப்ப இவ்வாறு அவருக்கு சிறையிலே என்னுடைய வீட்டிலே வந்து நோன்பு திறக்க விடாமல் போன்று வந்து என்னுடைய பிள்ளையை அரெஸ்ட் பண்ணி கொண்டு போனார். ஒரு மனச்சாட்சி இல்லையா? 1 வருடம் கடந்து விட்டது. மனச்சாட்சி என்று ஒன்று இல்லையா? 1 வருடம் கடந்து விட்டது. 2வது வருடத்தில் கால்பறித்து விட்டார். அவர் என்ன செய்த குற்றம்? இந்த புத்தகம் எழுதினால் என்ன? நாட்டிலே சமாதானம், சுபஸ்தம், நல்லுணக்கம், சமயம், நல்லிணக்கம், இதைத்தானே எழுதியிருக்கிறார். இவருக்கு ஏதாவது இவரை அரெஸ்ட் பண்ணலாமா? இதை மீண்டும் படிக்க கூடாதா? வலைக்கும் சலாம். என்னுடைய ஆகவே வீதியில் மைக்கில போட்டு பேசுகின்றார்கள். ஆகவே அந்த கதவை கொஞ்சம் மூடி விடுங்க. சரி. ஆகவே என்னுடைய ரோட்ல கொஞ்சம் பேசுங்கள், 1 நிமிஷம் பொறுத்து விடுங்க. இந்த நிகழ்ச்சி ஒருங்கிணைப்பாளருக்கும் மற்றும் இடையிலே ஒரு விஷயத்தை சொல்ல வேண்டும். முதலாவது எங்களை படைத்த இறைவனுக்கும், 2வதாக எங்களுடைய வழக்கறிஞர் சஞ்சய் வில்சனுக்கும், அத்தோடு என்னுடைய மகனுடைய விடுதலையிலே யாரெல்லாம் பங்கு பற்றி என்னுடைய மகனுடைய விடுதலையிலே எவ்வளவோ கஷ்டப்படுகின்ற ஒவ்வொரு மனிதனுக்கும் கடவுளுடைய நல்ல ஆசிகளும் நல்ல அருளும் கிடைக்குமாறு கடவுளிடத்தில் வேண்டியவனாக என்னுடைய மகனுடைய விடுதலைக்கு மேலும் மேலும் ஒவ்வொருத்தரும் உதவிகளையும் ஒத்துழைப்புகளையும் செய்யுமாறு ஒவ்வொருத்தரையும் வேண்டியதோடு நான் ஒரு கூலி தொழிலாளி 5 பிள்ளைகளின் தந்தை. அப்ப என்னுடைய பிள்ளைகளை எல்லாம் இந்த நாட்டுக்கு நல்ல பிள்ளைகளாக, கூலி வேலை செய்தாவது நல்ல பிள்ளைகளாக வளர்க்க வேண்டும் என்பதே என்னுடைய நான் என்னுடைய இலட்சியத்தை நான் செய்திருக்கின்றேன். என்னுடைய மூத்த பிள்ளையை நன்றாக வளர்த்திருக்கின்றேன். அடுத்த பிள்ளையையும் அதே போன்று நான் நன்றாக வளர்த்திருக்கின்றேன். எல்லா பிள்ளைகளையும் நான் நாட்டுக்கு நல்ல பிள்ளைகளாக வளர்த்திருக்கின்றேன். ஆனால் எனக்கு இந்த அரசாங்கம் செய்த நன்றி உபகாரம் என்னுடைய மூத்த பிள்ளையை சிறையில் கொண்டு வைத்திருப்பது. இதுதானா செய்வது? எனக்கு அந்த அரசாங்கம் தர வேண்டும். இந்த நாட்டுக்கு நான் நல்ல பிள்ளையை வளர்த்து கொடுத்ததுக்கு அரசாங்கம் எனக்கு நன்றிகளை செலுத்த வேண்டும். ஆகவே அதை செய்யாவிட்டாலும் நான் நல்ல பிள்ளை, என்னுடைய பிள்ளை சொல்லுவார், இந்த லாக்டவுன் காலத்திலே நாங்கள் நாட்டுக்கு துரோகமான வேலைகளை செய்யக்கூடாது, என்னிலிருந்து வெளியே யாருக்கும் போகக்கூடாது, வெளியிலிருந்து யாருக்கும் வரக்கூடாது, இருக்கலாம் இல்லாமல் போகலாம். ஆகவே அவ்வளவு அழகான ஒரு நல்ல ஒரு பிள்ளை, நாட்டுக்கு ஒரு துரோகம் செய்யாத ஒரு நல்ல அழகான பிள்ளை. என்னுடைய பிள்ளைகளிலே எனக்கு என்னுடைய அன்பை பெற்ற ஒரு பிள்ளைகளும் அவர் எல்லா பிள்ளைகளும் அன்பான பிள்ளைகள். அதே போன்று அவரும் என்னுடைய அன்பை பெற்றவர். ஆகவே என்னுடைய பிள்ளைகளுடைய விஷயத்தில் உங்களுடைய பெயர் எனக்கு ஞாபகம் இல்லை. உங்களுடைய பெயரை முடிந்தால் இன்ஷா அல்லாஹ் இது முடிந்ததும் சொல்லுங்கள். என்னுடைய மகனுடைய விடுதலையிலும் இப்பொழுது என்னுடைய மகனை தங்காலையில் கொண்டு வைத்திருக்கிறார்கள். டிஏடி தங்காலை ஆபீஸில் வைத்திருக்கின்றார்கள். என்னுடைய மகனுடைய விஷயத்தை அவர் பார்ப்பதற்கு ஒரு சஞ்சய் வில்சன் சார் சொல்லி இருப்பார் இந்த விஷயங்களை எல்லாம். இருந்தும் நானும் ஒரு விஷயத்தை சொல்லுகின்றேன். என்னுடைய மகன் செய்தி பார்ப்பதற்கோ அல்லது ஒரு பத்திரிகையை பார்ப்பதற்கோ அவ்வாறு வேறு தேவைகளுக்கு செய்வதற்கோ அவருக்கு எந்த இடமும் அளிக்கப்படவில்லை. அவர்கள் சாப்பாடு கொடுக்க வேண்டும். அவர்கள் கொடுக்காவிட்டால் எங்களிடத்தில் எங்கள் பிள்ளையை தர வேண்டும். முற்றாக எங்களுடைய பிள்ளையை விடுதலை செய்ய வேண்டும். அதுதான் முதலாவது. ஆனால் இப்பொழுது அவர் வைத்திருப்பவர்கள் என்ன செய்ய வேண்டும்? சாப்பாடு அவர்களுடைய கடமை. நல்ல சாப்பாடை கொடுக்க வேண்டும். சிறையில் சந்தேகத்தின் பேர் தான் வைத்திருக்கிறார்கள். ஆகவே அவர்கள் என்னுடைய பிள்ளைகளுக்கு சுகாதாரம், மனித உரிமை இத்தனையும் அவர்களுக்கு கொடுக்கப்படும். மனித உரிமைகள் அவங்க மீறப்படுகின்றது. என்னுடைய பிள்ளையுடைய விஷயத்தில் மீறப்படுகின்றது. அவருக்கு நல்ல சாப்பாடு கொடுக்க வேண்டும். அவருக்கு செய்தி பார்க்க அனுமதி இல்லை. அவருடைய விஷயங்களையே அவர் பார்ப்பதற்கு அனுமதி இல்லாத ஒரு கஷ்டத்தின் நிலைமையில் இருக்கின்றார். ஆகவே அவருடைய புத்தகத்தை பற்றி சொல்லியிருக்கிறேன். அவர் 7 வருடங்கள் ஜாமியா நலிமியாவிலே கல்வி கற்றவர். அவர் ஒரு சிறந்த ஒரு எழுத்தாளர். தமிழிலே மிகச் சிறந்த ஒரு நாட்டம் கொண்டவர். அவர் அரபு, தமிழ், இங்கிலீஷ், சிங்களம் பாஷைகள் 4ம் சிறப்பாக கற்றவர். ஆகவே அவர் சிறந்த ஒரு எழுத்தாளர், கவிஞர், ஒரு எழுத்தாளர். 4 பாஷைகளையும் கிட்டத்தட்ட படித்தவர் அழகான முறையில். ஆகவே என்னுடைய மகனை விடுதலை செய்வதற்கு முதல் கடவுளிடத்திலும் என்னுடைய மகனுடைய விடுதலைக்காக பாடுபடும் ஒவ்வொருவருக்கும் நன்றிகளை கூறி, இப்பொழுது பேசிய பசன சார் கூட இதில் நான் கேட்டுக்கொண்டிருந்தேன். அவர் கூட அழகாக பேசியிருந்தார். ஆனால் எனக்கு சிங்களத்திலே இங்கிலீஷிலோ கூடுதலான வார்த்தைகள் தெரியாது. தமிழில் பேசுவதை கொஞ்சம் கூடுதலாக கேட்கும். நான் தமிழில் பேசுவதை இங்கிலீஷுக்கும் சிங்களத்துக்கும் மாற்றி நீங்கள் போடுமாறு நான் வேண்டி விடைபெற்று செல்கின்றேன். வணக்கம், நன்றிகள். ஐபோவன். அஸ்ஸலாமு அலைக்கும்.
நன்றி ஐயா, நன்றி ஜாசிம் ஐயா. உங்களுடைய பேச்சை ஆஷிர் முகமது மொழிபெயர்த்தார். Ashir Muhammad will be translating the.
Yes, I'm here. Am I audible?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay.
I hope that. Yeah.
Yes, let me summarize what he has spoken so far. So he said, Ahnaf is my eldest son. He is an upright person. I have brought him up as someone who does good deeds. In fact, his name itself means that Ahnaf itself means that someone who proceeds in the straight path, someone who doesn't get deviated. So he also showed one of the controversial pages, which was made controversial by the state. One of the pages in which a picture of a gun was published. at the one side of the page, and the next side was about violence. The poem is about violence, but he in fact, he even recited the verses of the poem, in which Ahnaf says that if you carry the gun, then that is not going to be that is not going to lead to a constructive or a productive future. Rather, if you carry a gun, it is only going to lead the nation into destruction, violence, and the perpetuation of violence. So he said, is he arrested only for publishing a picture of a gun? Rather, what he is trying to say by publishing the picture of a gun is something about non-violence. He is actually preaching against that is using violence as a means to political ends. So he should be awarded. His father says he should be awarded for preaching non-violence, for preaching peace, for promoting communal harmony in the country, rather than getting imprisoned. So instead of giving him an award, the state has imprisoned him and has put him in jail. So he stresses this one particular grievance which he faces in the prison. That is, he is not even given proper food, and he remembers the particular situation in which he got arrested by the police. That was when he was going to break his fast. He was arrested when he was going to break the fast. So he is connecting this situation with he being not given proper food in the jail. So he says that he wants to extend his gratitude first of all to the God, and then to his lawyer Wilson sir, and also he wants to thank everyone who is extending their help, putting efforts, and making their voice heard for justice to be served. So he says that he's a coolie labor. So though he is a coolie, he made sure that he brings up his children as good citizens of this country. Rather, instead of being grateful for such a father who wanted to bring his children in as a good citizens, the only prize which he has got from the state is getting his son imprisoned. So he says that now he is in Tangalai prison. Now Ahnaf is in Tangalai prison, where he is not even allowed to watch news or read newspaper. Even the news about his case. So he is not allowed to watch those news or read newspaper. And he again stresses this demand that releasing Ahnaf is the ultimate demand, but as far as now, at least it should be made sure that he is given sufficient food, proper healthy food. So, and at last he says that he wants to thank everyone who has attended the program, and he also wants everyone to make their voice in support of Ahnaf Jazeem's release. So that's all what he wanted to convey in the meeting. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ashi, for translating that. It was great. Yes, now we are moving to the discussion forum. You can ask questions in either language, Tamil, Sinhala, or in English. So we will try to do our best to translate them as give at least a brief translation. So please try to limit your time to 2 to 3 minutes. Then only we can manage our time. So we can start. You can raise your hands or either unmute your mic and the camera, and you can proceed.
Thank you, everybody. It's a good presentation by all, including Mr. Bashana, Mr. Sanjay, and Sana. Articulating to the point, I thank you very much. It's a good presentation. And especially I thank Sanjay Wilson. He was making a request to join the action group. I think this that's a motivational point where we should take part in the national issues along with the other brothers on the national issues, not only our community issues, other national issues also we have to participate and get along with the other groups of this nature. That is my opinion. That's all.
Nirmala Rajasingham has raised her hand.
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yes, yes, we can.
Right. Okay. Basically, I want us to discuss, make some practical suggestions. I know that the action committee is there. I have signed this petition, but that's just, very little. I mean, we are signing hundreds of petitions every week, basically, for campaigns all over the world. And people here, I know that Ruki's article was there, and I know some people are working on, had done the translations, like Sumadi and Thiru had translated Ahnaf's poems. And then I saw that article being represented wrongly written up by the Sri Lanka Justice and Peace Campaign in Britain. Even the name Navarasam was written as Navasaram. So I had to point out and say, so basically to change the translation. But anyway, how do we join the action committee? This is what I want. And I want the action committee to make, maybe people could make suggestions here, particularly Sanjay Wilson. What can we do in Britain or in Europe? We have the usual mechanisms, like going to the MPs, to the human rights organizations, to go to British parliamentarians who are friendly to us. I can contact Jeremy Corbyn's Peace and Justice Project, things like that. I have actually wanted to do this and set up a group here. Is from the time of Ramzi Razik's arrest. But, I literally was asking various people, can we set up a committee? I am from South Asia Solidarity Group. We just set up a committee. And people were not forthcoming. And, you don't want these to be solo activities. I didn't want to just launch it from SASG. So basically, if we can, out of this action committee, in solidarity with this action committee, I want to know who is in it. I've already had a chat with Sena Kahetiaraji here. So we want practical suggestions as to what kind of activities that will be positive from the diaspora, basically. That's what I want some ideas on that, because I know that not all actions are good from the diaspora. And I know that the Sinhala Buddhist establishment can really make the diaspora activities sound really, anti-national. This is Modi's and Bolsonaro, all these authoritarian dictators are doing this, calling people when they work from the diaspora, that they are calling them anti-national. So that is I want practical suggestions from the people here. And thank you for organizing this meeting. I don't know who is organizing this meeting. I know is it the action committee that has organized this meeting?
Actually not, Nirmalaka. This is actually a small group called Minority Report. We, with some initiatives in Sri Lanka, we started, we decided to have this meeting. Yes. Any more questions, please?
Just practical suggestions from people. That's all I'm asking for, what we should do here.
Santosh, may I respond to the question already raised? I think Mr. Jeffrey also raised the issue. At the same time, Nirmala also raised the same question as to how we can practically act. And may I take a few minutes or 2 minutes?
Yes, please.
Yes.
Yeah, this Action Committee for the Defense of Freedom of Art and Expression, as I explained, it was established in 2019 when we were fighting for the defense of Shaktika Satkumar.
Yeah.
And it was established under the guidance of the Socialist Equality Party in Sri Lanka, under the perspective of International Committee of the Fourth International, which is an international organization, the only Marxist Trotskyist organization fighting for the independent mobilization of the working class against the capitalist system and for establishment of international socialism. That is our perspective. And in Action Committee is separate from the party and the international committee. It is established for the purpose of waging unrelenting action fights to defend art, freedom of expression and art and other democratic rights for the people through united mobilization of the working class across the borders and across all ethnic lines, whether it is Muslims, Tamils, English or any other, and also across borders. It is an international organization we have established here in Sri Lanka, but our organization is connected to International Workers Alliance of rank and file committees. It was established now, the rank and file committees International Alliance was established in this May, on the May 1st. On May 1st was established when the International Committee was conducting its May Day campaign, and it is the perspective, it is the only organization universally working to unite working class across all identity politics, across all identities, and to wage united fight against anti-democratic measures, austerity, and for the fight of winning workers' rights and also democratic rights. So that is the establishment, and it established that way, and we are inviting the people to come and join. All those who have not supported the anti-democratic governments, in a way that these parties, capitalist parties who have ruled this country and anywhere in the world, who have contributed in the demolition and abolition of or destruction of fundamental rights, human rights, and basic democratic rights of the people, are not able to join with us. Those who are aspiring to protect democratic rights are entitled to join, are invited to join, and at the same time, those who are indirectly or directly supported the anti-democratic measures of these governments, the right-wing factions, are not allowed. And this Action Committee will function democratically, and the decisions will be taken democratically. And so it's a unity. It's an organization where it's free from the trade unions, established trade unions, which are functioning as a wedge between workers and the corporations and the state to in a way that betray the rights and entitlements of the workers. And independent of those organizations, we invite all the other all the workers and intellectuals, students, artists to join with us, free from all ethnic divisions and regional divisions, to join with us to move forward. And we will be organizing pickets and also other public meetings, and we will be using different tactics in our effort to protect democratic rights and move forward. That's how it is, simply put, that's how it is. And I invite everybody who are interested to contact us, to contact the Action Committee, and you can also contact me, and we can discuss and we can move forward, and we can also establish regional branches. That was my first appeal, to establish regional branches of the Action Committee and fight for the defense of democratic rights. Thank you.
Thank you, Sanjaya.
Santosh.
Yes, Alina. Yeah, go ahead, please.
I would like to, there is a background noise coming from Vijayas. I would like to say a few words about what we have been doing here in Australia with regard to several issues that had arisen, not only with regard to the Muslim community, but also with regard to other communities. I think one of the problems we have been having in Sri Lanka as well as in other countries is that the ruling classes have been using racism or religion or whatever they could use to divide the people and keep their system safe. You know, the people who have their own system enforced, obviously it is neoliberalist or capitalist or whatever you can identify them as. Now, to continue their rule or to come to power, they use these differences. Now, what has happened practically is that when there is an issue or when the ruling parties do something against one community, the other communities remain silent. When one religious community is persecuted, the others remain silent. And in that way, the regimes have been successful in maintaining their rule. Say, since 1948, I think there was during a certain period of time, there were some sort of communal harmony until it was destabilized in 1956, starting from 56. Although the initial step of destabilization started in 1948 itself, by disfranchising the state workers. What I'm going to say is basically in 1971, sort of whatever that has happened, one could interpret it as wrong or right or whatever, but it was only Sinhalese who fought. There were only a couple of people. I know there was one Muslim comrade from Alugama, Jeffrey, whose leg was broken by the police. And now, in 1971, the Tamil community or the Muslim community raised any concern with regard to what was happening. There were at least around, they say, about 10,000 were killed. And during the repressive actions taken against the Tamil community until, say, starting from 1983 or earlier than that, until 2009, still it is continuing. Most of the Sinhalese were silent. And some of the Sinhalese who were talking against them, they were also subjected to persecution. I was detained under Prevention of Terrorism Act in 1985 because I was expressing my support towards the Tamil liberation struggle. I didn't support the LTTE, but I advocated equality for all citizens in Sri Lanka, the right for equality and against discrimination. What we have done here is in the expected community also it's the same situation. Say recently when the government, the current government, enforced under emergency law or whatever, under health security legislation or whatever, that cremation of Muslim, the corpses of people who have been affected by COVID of Islamic faith. Now, what we did is, I mean, we have very small organizations here, and we spoke to the Muslim community and we spoke to the Tamil community. Why aren't you doing something against what is happening in Sri Lanka? So there was some action. There was a motor vehicle. I mean, in the current circumstances, because of COVID, there are lockdowns and, they don't allow any protest action to take place. But still, in Melbourne, there were motor vehicle parades, protesting against the Sri Lankan government. So what I'm saying is basically we need to talk to other people. We have barriers artificially created among communities, among religious communities. We have to break down those barriers. Those barriers were built by the regimes, by those people. So we have to work towards destroying those barriers and starting communicating with other people. Otherwise, we will be remaining preaching to the converted. Thank you.
Thank you, Lionel. Next, Brito Fernando. Yes, please. Brito Fernando has raised his hand.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Yes.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I think all can hear you. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. Now, my problem is, yes, we have to do something. So what are the actual actions we are going to take? Because we'll do something and we'll satisfy ourselves that we have done something, but the effect and the results is not getting what we are expecting. Because in Sri Lanka, the situation, the civil societies are also not that strong and they are not together because they are not as a coalition or something like that. And we are being labeled as the traitors to the country, or the people who are earning US dollars and euros, selling the issues and everything. My problem is now even the UNHRC passed the resolution. Now the government doesn't take care of that because they are so strong because of the backing of Russia and China. So the China and the militarization in Sri Lanka is strong. The main thing is not only this government, even the opposition, even sometimes JVP, their vote is based on the singular racism in the South. So that's the problem, because they always find some the other against the single. So I do agree what we have to do. The petitions, yes, there are so many petitions going on, but no reaction is coming from the government. The legal system, now it's corrupt because the influence of the political influence is much there. So we have to think what actually we are going to do. The only thing, if there's a power change, but the thing is, even there is no opposition or there no strong political party to take the campaign up. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Any other opinions, questions?
Comrade Brito said that we need to have a political party to mobilize the people. On the one hand, it is true, but then a political party comes into being by mobilizing people as well. Say for example, what happened in Chile recently, against Sebastian Pinera's regime. It was militarily repressing the established parties, and well, during the elections, what happened is there were some young people who came forward and they were elected to power. I'm not saying they would be doing the 100% correct thing, but they seem to be more progressive. So I think rather than relying on our own groups, the political parties and so on, we have to go to the people. I think ultimately it's the people who will get rid of the regimes or do whatever. We can't substitute ourselves on behalf of the people. So we have to empower people somehow or other. We have to find ways.
Santosh, I have a little question to ask Sanjay. One tiny little question. Can I ask, please?
Yes.
I just want to know who the Frontline Socialist Party are. Do they have a kind of a partner or organization that they are linked to in Britain? Is my question very quickly.
No, we are not the Frontline Socialist Party. We are the Socialist Equality Party. Frontline
Sorry.
Socialist Party, yes, is a pseudo left party that we have. That's how we have categorized it, and we have no any link or any association with that.
So the
Socialist.
All right, sorry. The Socialist Equality Party. Who are you linked to here? Are you linked to anybody in Britain at all?
Yeah, it's in Britain. We have a Socialist Equality Party branch in UK. We have a very vibrant party there in UK, and we are. You can see if you go to Socialist website, there's a branch. There's a separate website. They are linked. WSWS.
WSWS. Okay, all right.
So that is we. So if you go to that, you can find our branch there. There's contact details, and that's our party there. So and that is connected to International Committee of the Fourth International.
Yeah. Now I get my bearings. Right. Okay, all right. Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Sanjay.
Is there a way of, sorry, I'm barging again. In each of our countries, like some people are from Britain, some people are from Australia, some people, in other European countries. Is there a possibility of getting together some of the community organizations there and write to their own governments explaining what the Sri Lankan government is doing? Say, as Comrade Jayasekera explained, what has happened? There are nothing illegal this person has done, and he has been framed and detained under Prevention of Terrorism Act without any information being given out. I mean, under the Prevention of Terrorism Act, that is what happens, right? And so if we can get some of the organizations and then go to those organizations, explain the situation and mobilize them and start writing to their own governments and making representations to the United Nations Human Rights Council and so on. I know it don't do anything much, but at least it will create some awareness among, most of these governments are also helping. I mean, if you should, it's a vicious cycle because most of the regimes are supporting. Even, I mean, we talked about what is happening in other countries, but what is happening in China? What is happening in Russia? Although they don't use Prevention of Terrorism Act, but still they use their own national security regulations to shut the people up. Shut the people up. So I think as expatriate communities, we are in a better position to get some organizations together and start doing something practical by writing to organizations, and probably we could have demonstrations. I mean, protests, but under COVID conditions, it's very difficult. So still, I think we can have Zoom protest rallies and so on. So thank you.
Thank you.
Santosh, I'm sorry to barge in like this again and again with questions. Is it okay that you give me another go? I don't want to monopolize this meeting, but just curious.
Santosh brother, your mic is off, I think.
Yes, Charles Antonidas is waiting. He's raising his hand. I think I will let him first, and then.
Yeah, that's fine. That's fine.
Thank you, Santosh. It's a long way to think that finally we have started to do something. The difficulty that I'm sort of encountering with is that the government is charging for each and every act of detention, or if it is something against the state or the politicians, or even memorialization, it is also being charged under Prevention of Terrorism Act. Is there anything that we can do to counter this basic approach by the Sri Lankan government to put everything under PTA or ICCPR? That's my question to the legal community and the campaign community here.
Thank you. Thank you, Charles. Rookie Fernando. Rookie, are you in?
Yes, thank you. So in terms of some of the things that countries in, I think outside Sri Lanka can do is also to look at the literary aspect. No, so not just the conventional protest or letter writing or approaching politicians. So I think this is a poet. So I think literally artistic groups in other countries could also get involved rather than just political and human rights groups. So I think that might be helpful, poetry reading and so things like that. The second part, slightly more political, I think there is a bit of a contradiction in what I'm going to say. On one hand, I think the European Union is going to do a review of the GSP plus privileges, trade privileges granted to Sri Lanka towards the end of this year. So I think that is a leverage to ask them to raise Ahnaf's case, but not just Ahnaf's case, but others as well. I think we have about 300 people, Muslims, who have been detained since 2019. And as far as I know, none of them have been charged. So in fact, some of them have been detained much longer than they have Ahnaf or Hijaz. That's also, I think, something that can be demanded. At least some of them should be released in the negotiations leading up to GSP plus review end of this year, at least demanding that some of these people must be released before that. That's a kind of leverage they have. And also, I think the contradiction is in the PTA. Now, the European Union in general have asked for a reform of the PTA, which is, for me and I think some others, we are not asking for a reform of the PTA. We think the PTA is beyond reform. We are asking for a repeal. But at least I think we should be able to strongly put forward these ideas, particularly in the lead up to this review. The last thing that I also want to say is I think there has been some support on and off towards families of Tamil political prisoners, but I think it's been very difficult for the Muslim prisoners who've been detained under PTA. Some of them are very young children, and some of them are wives who have not used to reaching out to other people so much. So they're really in a difficult situation. And I personally I know that even some Muslim philanthropists who want to help are not keen to help in Sri Lanka, because they feel that they themselves will be stigmatized as supporting families of terrorists. So I think that's also some thing that I think could be looked at. I mean, it's not something we can discuss in a kind of a big forum like this, but I just want to flag it that these families also may need some support. Thank you.
Thank you, Rocky Fernando. Any other questions? Nirmalaka, you wanted to?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just not Ahnaf's case. It's the kind of demonizing of the Muslim community, starting with if you're looking at individual cases. Dr. Shafi's case, we don't know what happened to that. Has he left the country? Is he still there? What's happening? Did he fight for reinstation compensation, or then Ramzi Razik, and also all these 300 people that Ruki, I think we should talk about them, all of them together, highlighting the case of Ahnaf and maybe, separately the literary people out of that. One. Two, I am very, very uncomfortable about asking the EU over GSP plus. I find it very problematic politically, because we want to dissect and deconstruct and take apart this whole ethno-nationalist discourse in Sri Lanka. And if we want to do that, then saying doing anything that will affect ordinary people, even though just simply because we are not very powerful against the regime, is very problematic. I am not in favor of anything that can negatively affect people's economic lives, in particular, also the majority community's economic lives. And lobbying with these Western governments is playing with the devil. They, the EU is marginally better, but Britain is absolutely horrific as far as at the moment. And the Labour Party, if they come to power, will not be any different with regard to dealing with these kinds of authoritarian dictators, dictatorial democracies. As long as there is a nominal democracy, they are fine to do business with them. So we have to be very strategic in the way we build up these lobbying activities here. I think that we should, one of the two things, I would like Ruki or somebody to let us know who has been contacted so far, which human rights organizations. Is Human Rights Watch in the know? Is Amnesty International in the know? Is PEN in the know? Article 19, are all these people in the know? Any left-leaning progressive members of parliament in Australia or here or in the Congress? Have they been, these are the practical things we can do if we set up an outfit here, drawing from different political organizations, and we can take it. And then the other thing is, of course, doing a hell of a lot of translations or leafleting or publicity material. Let me just finish. One last thing. Doing a lot of publicity through social media in Sinhala. That is so crucial. In Sinhala, don't rely on the press, because we know that the press in Sri Lanka is very racist. And so let's just try and, insert it through. One of the things that we do with the India campaign is to penetrate family WhatsApp groups, family WhatsApp groups in Hindi and English with the Hindutva lobby here, because the Hindutva lobby is huge in Britain. So that is something that we do. So things like that. Really practical suggestions. Right, talking about why Ahnaf's case is so ludicrous, that he writes against Islamism, and then they are detaining him for encouraging Islamism. And same thing with Ramzi Razi. So to do a lot of material and publicity through singular social media groups. That's it. I'm done now.
Thank you, Nirmala. Nandana is waiting for a long time. Sorry, Nandana. Yes, please.
Yes, I think I can talk in Sinhala.
Yes.
Any translation for me?
Yes, I think I can organize very quickly something. Yes. Go ahead. Nandana.
Okay. Oh, mage mitra Sanjay Wilson sahodara tamange katawedi Ahnaf Jazeem ඇතුළු ප්‍රහාරයට ලක්වී සිටින සහ ආණ්ඩුවේ මේ මර්ධනකාරී ව්‍යාපාරයට විරුද්ධව වැඩ කිරීම සඳහා සංවිධාන ක්‍රමයක් සහ ක්‍රියාමාර්ගයක් ඉදිරිපත් කරනු ලබලා තියෙනවා. ඒකදී ඔහු පැහැදිලිව පෙන්වා දුන්නා. ඒ කියන්නේ කම්කරුවන්ගේ, ශිෂ්‍යයන්ගේ, තරුණයන්ගේ, කලාකරුවන්ගේ කියන මේ මහා සමාජ බලවේගයක්. ඒ හැටියට ගත්තයින් පස්සේ බලමුළු ගන්නවන්න මොබිලයිස් කිරීමේ අවශ්‍යතාවය තියෙනවා. ඒ අවශ්‍යතාවයෙන් තොරව, ඒ කියන්නේ එහෙම මොබිලයිස් කිරීමෙන් තොරව අපට මේ ධනේශ්වර අර්බුදයේ ගිලිලා ඉන්න මේ ධනේශ්වර ආණ්ඩුව වල අරමුණු ව්‍යාපාර නතර කරන්න බෑ කියන එකෙන් පැහැදිලිව. මේ තත්ත්වයේදී ඔහු ඉතා පැහැදිලිව කිව්වා, මම කලින් සඳහන් කරා වගේ. ඒ කියන්නේ ඒක සමාජවාදී සමානතා පක්ෂයේ මූලිකත්වයක් කරන් ඉදිරිපත් කරපු සංවිධාන රූපයක්, ක්‍රියාමාර්ගයක්, පිළිවෙතක් තමයි. එහෙම වුණා වුණත් විවිධ දේශපාලන අදහස් දරන, නමුත් මෙම ධනේශ්වර මර්ධනයට විරුද්ධ එය අවසන් කළ යුතුයි අධිෂ්ඨානවත්ව සටන් කිරීමට සූදානම්, එය අවසන් වෙනතෙක් සටන් කරන අය සියලු අයට ඒක ඇතුළට ඒකාබද්ධ වෙන්න පුළුවන්. එක කොන්දේසියකට එරෙහිව. ඒ කියන්නේ ධනවාදී පාර්ලිමේන්තුව තුලින් හෝ මෙම ධන බංකොලොත් ධනපති ක්‍රමය තුලින් කොහොම හරි මේ ප්‍රශ්නේ විසඳ ගන්නවයි කියන මිත්‍යාව උඩ පදනම් නොවෙන. එහෙම නැත්නම් අනිත් පැත්තට මම එහෙම කිව්වොත් මේ මහජනතාවගේ බලය ඒකාබද්ධ කිරීම, බලමුළු ගැන්වීම තුලින් විතරක් මේ ජයගත හැකිය කියන විශ්වාසය තියෙන හැමට ඒකට එකතු වෙලා තියෙනවා. දැන් මම දැක්කා බ්‍රිටෝ ෆර්නෑන්ඩෝ ඔය බුද්ධි සමිති නායකයෙක් දැන් කතා කරා. ඔව් සදාන් කරලා කියනවා ඒක කරන්න බැරි වැඩක්. ඒක වෙන විදියකට ඔහු ඒක ඉදිරිපත් කරේ. ශ්‍රී ලංකාවේ සමාජය එච්චර ශක්තිමත් නැහැ. අනිත් පැත්තෙන් කියනවා පෙස්සමක් ගැහුවට වැඩක් නැහැ, ඒගොල්ලෝ ගණන් ගන්නෙ නැහැ. දැන් මේ පෙස්සම සංජය විල්සන් සහෝදරයා යෝජනා කිරීමෙන් අදහස් කරේ නැහැ ඔය බුද්ධි සමිති නායකයෝ කරන ආකාරයට ආණ්ඩුවත් එක්ක කතා කරලා ප්‍රශ්න විසඳ ගන්න කරන වැඩක් හැටියට. මම හිතන්නේ මේ අදහසක් ඒ සහෝදරයා කොහොමවත් ඉදිරිපත් කරයි කියලා. ඉදිරිපත් කරපු වැඩපිළිවෙල ඇතුළේ මේ පෙස්සමක් ඉදිරිපත් කිරීම හරහා අපි බලාපොරොත්තු වෙන්නේ මහජනතාව තුළට මේ ප්‍රශ්නය අරගෙන ගිහිල්ලා වුන් මේ ප්‍රහාරය එල්ල කරන්නන්ට විරුද්ධව ඒකාබද්ධ කිරීම. මිසක් කොහොම හරි සාකච්ඡා කරලා ඔය වෘත්තීය සමිති නායකයෝ දැන් පහුගිය අපි දැක්ක පැන්ඩමික් එක ආවට පස්සේ මේ පැන්ඩමික් එක ඇතුළතදී වුන් ත්‍රිපාක්ෂික විසුමක් ගහගෙන ආණ්ඩුවත් එක්ක එකතු වෙලා අපි කියනකොට දැන් මේ විනාශ වෙනවා මේ රෝගය නිසා මහජනතාව, ඒක නිසා මේක යම් විදියකට අත්‍යවශ්‍ය නොවන සේවා වහලා දාලා දැමිය යුතුව තියෙනවායි කියලා ඔවුන් ඇතුලේ වැඩ කරන ක්‍රම යෝජනා කරපු අය ඒ හැටියට ගත්තා. මේ දැන් කියනවා මිනිස්සු මැරෙන නිසා ඇතුලේ ස්පිරිතාල හදලා නිදහස් වෙනද කලාප ළමයි ටික ඒවට දාලා හදාගෙන කොහොම හරි වැඩේ කරගෙන යන්නේ. කියන්නේ ඒක හරියන්නේ නැහැ. ඒක මම මෙහෙම සඳහන් කරන්නේ දැන් මේ ඔය මම කියන්නේ කොරෝනා වෛරසය එනවත් එක්කම තමයි ආණ්ඩුව මුස්ලිම් ප්‍රහාර අලුත් වටයකින් පටන් ගත්තේ. අපි දැක්කා ඔවුන් ලෝකෙ බොහෝ කිසි රටක කියන්නේ රටවල පොදුවේ ගත්තාම පිළි නොගත්ත ඒකම ලෝක සෞඛ්‍ය සංවිධානය ලෝක ප්‍රතික්ෂේප කරපු පිළිවෙතක් යෝජනා කරා ආණ්ඩුව මුස්ලිම් ජනතාවගේ මෘතදේහ ගිනි තැබීම සඳහා සාපරාධී යෝජනාවක් ඒ හැටියට ගත්තයින් පස්සේ මාර්තු මාසේ 20 ගණන් වල දෙවෙනි මුස්ලිම් පුද්ගලයා මිය ගියා. ඔහුගේ මරණය මහර ඊගමුවේ තොහනට ගෙනියලා ඒ සෙමෙන්ටරි එකට ගෙනියලා පවුලයට නොදන්නා ගිනි තියලා තමයි මේ මුස්ලිම් ජනගහනයට විරුද්ධව කොරෝනා එක ඇතුළතදී ප්‍රහාරය ආරම්භ කරේ. ඒ ප්‍රහාරය කොච්චර දුර ගියාද කිව්වොත් පහුගිය ජනවාරි මාසයේ අවසාන වෙනකොට මේ ජනවාරි මාසෙ වෙනකොට එබඳු මරණ 200ක් බලහත්කාරයෙන් පුළුස්සා දමනු ලැබලා තිබුණා. මෙය සිංහල මුස්ලිම් සහ අනෙකුත් ජන කණ්ඩායම් අතර තියෙන ඒකාබද්ධතාවය බිඳ දැමීමටත් උන් බිය ගැනීමටත් ගත්ත පියවරක්. හරියටම ඒ කාල පරිච්ඡේදයේදී තමයි අපි දකින්නේ රන්සි රසීප් ඊට පස්සේ මේ අලුත් අන්නාෆ් අත්අඩංගුවට ගැනීම වැනි ක්‍රියාවල් මේවා දිගින් දිගටම සිද්ධ වුණා. එතකොට මොකද ඇයි ආණ්ඩුව මෙහෙම කරේ? ආණ්ඩුවට ඇත්තටම මේ වසංගතයට මුහුණ දෙන්න මොනම විදියක්වත් නැහැ. අද වෙනකොට දන්නවා මම කියන්නේ ලක්ෂ ගණනින් මේක මැරෙනවා ගාල්ල පැත්තේ මම ජීවත් වෙන්නේ. ගාල්ල හොස්පිටල් එකේ දැන් සති දෙකකට ඉස්සෙල්ලා ගම්වල මැරිච්ච මලමිනි 50 ගාණක් ගම්වල මියගිය මලමිනි 50 ගාණක් ගාල්ල හොස්පිටල් එකේ තිබුණා. ඒ මට්ටමට මේවා ගිහිල්ලා තියෙනවා. දැන් මේ තත්ත්වය ඇතුලේ සිංහල දෙමළ මුස්ලිම් කියන වර්ග ભેදයකින් තොරව මහජනතාව ධනේශ්වර ප්‍රහාරයට එල්ල වෙන තත්ත්වයක් යටතේ ඊට එරෙහිව ඒකාබද්ධව නැගී සිටීමේ සියලු වෛශ්වික කොන්දේසි මතුවෙන තත්ත්වයක් ඇතුලේ ආණ්ඩුව මුස්ලිම් විරෝධය යලි වටයකින් ඉස්මතු කරගන්න වැඩ කරලා තියෙනවා. එතන මේක කවුරු හරි කියනවා නම් ශ්‍රී ලංකාවේ මහජනතාව වර්ගවාදී කියලා ඒක අන්තද්‍රෝහී ප්‍රකාශයක්. ශ්‍රී ලංකාවේ මහජනතාව වර්ගවාදී නෙමෙයි. ශ්‍රී ලංකාවේ ධනපති පන්තිය හා දේශපාලන පක්ෂ අනිත් හැම රටකම වගේම මහජනතාව තුළ මේ වෛරය ඇවිස්සීමේ වැඩ කටයුතු කරලා ඔවුන් නේතන්ට ඇදලා දාන්න වැඩ කරනවා හැමතිස්සම අවිශ්වාසය වර්ධනය කරන්න වැඩ කරනවා. එතකොට මේ වර්ගවාදයට විරුද්ධයි කියලා වෙනම සටනක් ඇත්තේ නැහැ. ධනවාදයට විරුද්ධව ඒකාබද්ධ මහජනතාව ඒකාබද්ධ කරන්න පුළුවන් වෙන්නේ මහජනතාවගේ මූලික අරගල වලට ඉස්මත්තට එන අරගල වලට ක්‍රියාමාර්ගයක් වැඩපිළිවෙලක් සම්පාදනය කිරීම මගින්. නමුත් මේ භූගෝලීකරණය වෙච්ච ලෝක තත්ත්වයේ යටතේ එකදු තීන්දුවක්වත් ආණ්ඩුව වලට තමන්ගේ එක් කියන රට ඇතුලේ ගන්න බැරුව වගේ විසඳන්න බැරුව වගේ මේ කියන මේ රෝගය ජාත්‍යන්තර රෝගයක් හැටියට පවතින තත්ත්වයක් ඇතුලේ තනි ආණ්ඩුවට ඒක වළක්වන්න බැරුව වගේ මුස්ලිම් ජනතාවට මේ කරන ප්‍රහාර සහ අනිකුත් මහ ජනතාවට කරන මේ කරන ලෝක පරිමාණව කරන ප්‍රහාර මාලාවන් ඒ කියන්නේ ලෝක පරිමාණවම සුළු ජාතීන්ට කළු ජාතීන්ට විවිධකාරී කරන ප්‍රහාර මාලාවන් එක එක රටවල් වල ජාතික ආණ්ඩුවක් කොහොම හරි බේරගෙන නැත්තම් පිරිසිදු කරගෙන යන්න හදන ව්‍යාපාර වලට ප්‍රතිගාමී ව්‍යාපාර වලට කිසිසේත්ම ඒවට විසඳුන්නේ නැහැ ඒ ව්‍යාපාර. ඒක තමයි බංකොලොත්කම. ඒ බංකොලොත්කමෙන් තමයි මේ වගේ ප්‍රතිගාමී ප්‍රකාශන මෙතනට එළිදරව් වෙන්නේ. ඒ නිසා මම ඉල්ලා හිටිනවා මෙතන හිතන මතන හැම කෙනෙකුටම කල්පනා කරලා බලන්න මේ ගැන. ඒ අනුව ලෝක සමාජවාදී විපඩවිය ඉදිරිපත් කරන ලිපි ලේඛන කියවලා හදාarලා ඒව සම්බන්ධයෙන් තමන්ගේ සම්බන්ධතාවය ඒව හරහා ගොඩනගා ගන්න ක්‍රියාකාරීකම් ගොඩනගා ගන්න ඒකාබද්ධ වෙන්නේ කියලා ඉල්ලා හිටියා. ස්තුතියි.
Thank you, Nandana. Sanjay, can you briefly translate this? Give a brief translation of this speech.
Yes, Santosh, yes. Briefly, what he said. Is Kumbara is there? Are you able to translate? Vakumbara, are you there?
Vasanta Vakumbara, are you there?
No, Ananda Vakumbara.
Ananda Vakumbara, sorry.
Is it there? His mic is
muted. Yeah.
Muted. So basically, what he said is he reiterated what I said, specifically that there is no solution for racial violence or government-sponsored racist campaign from that which is separated from the fight for international socialism, and there is no separate fight against racism. That is the most primary concern, primary point issue that he raised. And he said the necessity of fighting for the united struggles of the people beyond all differences of all divisions of ethnicities or other racial or other kind of identity politics. The need of unity and united struggle against the capitalist system, which is the root cause of all these racial violence, racial and racist campaigns being waged by capitalist governments, not only in Sri Lanka, but in other countries too. It may be the black or white, or it may be the Hindus or Muslims, it may be the Sinhalese or Tamils, or between Muslims. All over the world, what is necessary is a united struggle, not separate struggles for separate communities. There is no viable solution achievable through different separate struggles by separate groups, and it will be counterproductive. It is the government's or the capitalist government's plan to divide the working people. As I explained, the discrimination is a kind of is a tool that capitalist governments are using to wage the racist campaign by which the governments are trying to divide and rule the people, working class, especially to suppress struggles of the working class against capitalist governments and their austerity measures and counter-revolutionary measures. So democratic rights, the protection and safe defense of democratic rights specifically rest on the fact that there should be a united fight for uprooting this capitalist system, which is the root cause of all ethnic and racial suppression. And the other thing he said, he emphasized, he referring to what Sabito Fernando said, who was a trade unionist, and refuting the trade union perspective of having a discussion or concessionary discussions between government and us. He said that this perspective is a trap for the working class, and establishing by way of launching the public petition by the Action Committee of the Defense of Freedom of Art and Expression, it has never intended that there is a way of compromising or discussions between government and the working class. The Action Committee is not going to compromise with this government. It is there to demand with the force of the working class, to demand from the government immediate release of poet, and immediate cessation of all criminal proceedings against him, and full compensation for him. And it has already also demanded the abolition of all anti-democratic laws and repressive laws like PTA, ICCPR Act, and Computer Crimes Act, like that. So what he has pointed out is that the Action Committee has no perspective of trade unionism. That is, trade unionism is not the perspective of Action Committee. So it is by way of the Action Committee is functioning with the perspective of united struggles of the working class for the abolition of capitalist system and for the establishment of socialism. And in that struggle, our demands would be meted. Our demands will be successful, and that is our perspective. And and he has mentioned that there is a racism within the South, with the Sinhalese people, which he refuted. It is a wrong concept. The racist campaign is waged by the government, the ruling class, and it is only an organization. It's only an organization which has the perspective of it, which has the perspective of uniting the working class across ethnic borders, ethnic divisions, can only unite the struggles and fight for.
Shorten your talk a bit, because
yes, I'll shorten. So I'm coming to. So that's what he said, and the other thing he said. Yeah, he said so. There is no solution to this racial violence and discrimination within the capitalist system. Democracy is inconsistent with the capitalist system. So that's what he said. And he wanted to build up. He wanted everybody to contact the action committee and to join building the action committee and bring forward this fight forward.
Thank you, Sanjay. Thank you. Yeah, what I think is just I'm telling my opinion very quickly, because it's abstractly saying that we have to unite and fight against these atrocities, government racism and oppression. But the fact is that the dehumanization process of those kind of mechanisms keep on segregating people. So that's the reality is that there is segregation even among the working classes or unions. So we can't just abstractly think that the collective action of the working classes will, because working classes are themselves divided because the hegemony of ethno-nationalism is prevailing there. So I think we can discuss further. Bashana, yeah. Next. Bashana was waiting for a long time, I think.
I just want to clarify something. Actually, it's about the campaigns that have been so far. Apart from what the action committee, the Sanjay referred to, there had been an international appeal like 3 weeks before, around 3 weeks before. International appeal has been launched with the participation of 13 organizations. And the initial, JDS was one of the 4 organizations initiated the petition, along with the PEN International, Sri Lanka Campaign, and Amnesty International. So, that is one of the one front actually, which has been already, to a certain extent, working on this matter. But as someone pointed out, I think Ruki pointed it out, it's quite also important to get individual kind of, well-known, like cultural activists, writers, sort of people, to launch a kind of collective action to extend their solidarity to Ahnaf. So in that case, I think apart from these human rights organizations who are getting involved and writers associations, and one of the problems is also because there's a certain policy maintained by the international media rights act groups, because they are strictly sticking to the kind of mandate that they have, that they will campaign if the person who's the victim is in a strict sense of the word, is a journalist. So which also happened to Shaktika's case. So because that prevents them from taking a clear kind of position, even though they are not, of course, they are opposing it, but they like becoming a kind of signatory to the joint action, supporting, demanding Ahnaf's release actually. So therefore, I think what Ruki pointed out is extremely important in the sense that apart from organizational interventions, it's also important individual kind of on the individual level with progressive writers, progressive cultural activists, and all kind of people who are concerned about the artistic freedom, taking a stand and organizing them to work on a kind of collective appeal, demanding unconditional release of Ahnaf Jazeem. I just want to clarify that. Thank you.
Thank you, Bashana. Thank you. Ruki, Fernando, Ruki, are you in?
Yes, thank you for sorry for asking to speak again, but very quickly to respond to what all Nirmala said. I think what I asked is not to withdraw the GSP plus. What I suggested is that the negotiation process should be used to seek the release of some of these people who've been detained. And I also want to reiterate that I have a, and so many others activists have a contradiction with the EU in terms of reform or repeal, where we stand for repeal and the EU generally stands for reform. No, but I think that shouldn't prevent us from approaching them and lobbying them for the release of people who are unjustly detained, if they have some leverage to do that. And I think in the terms of trade privileges like GSP plus, we must also not assume that they automatically benefit workers and the mass of the population. That is yet to be shown, I think. So even in terms of the situation in the factories right now, in the context of COVID, the way they have been behaving. So I think that's something that we should be conscious about. And also, I kind of agree in terms of what this Bashana said, no international organizations, but I think that sadly also applies to media organizations in Sri Lanka, not just international media organizations. Sometimes the very slowness and very kind of narrow ideas about freedom of expression, instead of looking at freedom of expression in general, to look, some organizations tend to look at just who is a professional journalist who has registered the identity card with the government, or employee of a mainstream media institution, kind of. So I think that the problem also exists in the country, in Sri Lanka, not just among international organizations.
Thank you. Thank you. I just have a question from Wills, Sanjay and Ruki, because recently there was a letter, from Sanjay to the magistrate court regarding the ill treatment, the indifference, indifferent treatment to Ahnaf, and I'm just wondering whether it's in related to a kind of structural discrimination taking place, because it was mentioned that the others were offered tea and Ahnaf was not offered tea, so it's kind of a structural discrimination taking place underneath in the line of ethnicity and religion or something like that.
You want me to respond, Santosh?
Yes, please, because it was.
Yes. Yeah, I wrote this letter to the IGP, copying to several others, including the Human Rights Commission, the Police Commission, as a lawyer. And I pointed out that these things are happening, that is ill treatment meted out to Ahnaf. And I have pointed out that these things are being exercised upon him, as I pointed out in my earlier speech, that by doing these acts of ill treatment, they are trying to they are treating him inhumanely and in a degrading manner, and as usual, it is as it is the usual practice of the Sri Lankan police. What they are trying to do is to enforce, to suppress him and to subjugate him, and to force to obtain whatever statement or incriminating admission that they want to take. That's very obvious. It's very obvious, and so I mean, so it's not. I don't agree with this structural discrimination. What is happening is he's targeted because they want to prove the case, and there are other Muslims, and they are treated separately, but in the normal manner. You know what food they are being provided for, and even they have not been provided to. There's no access to news or anything else, it's complete mental torture. But relative to that, after our campaign started, and after he was transferred to Tangol prison, Tangol detention center, these things have aggravated, and he has been targeted. He's been targeted and treated specifically with an intention. It's very much clear, with an intention to harass him. So that's what it's happening. So it's a technique. It's a technique being used
in order to get a confession from him. Yes, in order to.
Yes, it's obvious.
Thank you, Sanjay. Any more opinions?
Hello?
Yes, go on. Who is speaking there? I can't hear you.
Hello?
சொல்லுங்க ஐயா.
எங்கட மகன் விஷயத்துல சந்தோஷம். எங்கட மகனை கிட்டத்தட்ட நாங்க 9 மாதங்களாக எங்கட அம்மாவும் சரி குடும்பத்தை பார்க்காம 9 மாசங்கள் தங்காலில 3 நிமிடம் தான் எங்கட மகனுக்கு பேசத்தாங்க. இந்த விஷயங்கள் தான் வீடியோ தரப்பட வேணும். இதுவரைக்கும் அதை எங்களுக்கு செய்யப்படல. மற்றது 9 மாதங்களாயிட்டு பார்க்கறதுக்கும் தர வேண்டும் வீடியோ கால். இதோட எங்களோட பிள்ளையில விடுதலைக்காக வேண்டி பாடுபடும் ஒவ்வொருத்தருக்கும் நான் அப்புறம் கொஞ்சம் முன்னுக்கு பேசும்போது ஹிஸ்டரிக்கல் அறிவிச்சு கொண்டு போனதால கொஞ்சம் விளக்கம் இல்லாம அப்புறம் கொஞ்சம் விஷயத்த நான் சொல்றேன். எங்களோட மாண்ட விஷயங்கள்ல பாடுபடுற ஒவ்வொருத்தருக்கும் கடவுளிடத்துல நன்றியை கோருவதோடு எங்களுக்கு முதலாவதான கடவுளுக்கும் அடுத்ததான சஞ்சய் வில்சன் அத்தோடு எங்களுக்கு மகனுடைய விஷயங்களை பேசுகின்ற ஒவ்வொருத்தருக்கும் நான் மிகப்பெரிய நன்றியை நன்றியை சொல்லுவதோடு ஒவ்வொருத்தரும் இருக்கக்கூடிய சிறையில் அநியாயமாக அடைபட்டிருக்கக்கூடிய ஒவ்வொருத்தரும் விடுதலையாக வேண்டும் என்ற பிரார்த்தனையோடு எங்களோட மகனை 9 மாதங்களான எங்களை காணுவது நாங்கள் எங்களோட மனைவி பிள்ளைகள் யாருமே காணவில்லை. 3 நிமிடம் தாரார்கள். இதை மீண்டும் சொல்லுங்கள். எங்களுக்கு அதை போலாக மாற்றி ஒரு அரை மணி தியாலமாவது கிட்டத்தட்ட ஒரு கிழமைக்கு ஒருக்காக தர வேண்டும் என்பது கூறிக்கொண்டு நான் விடைபெறுகின்றேன். இத்தோடு எனக்கு மிகப்பெரிய நன்றிகள்.
வணக்கம். Ananda Vakumbara, could you please mute your microphone? Yes, thank you. Yeah, that was Ahnaf's father, AGM Jazeem speaking. What he concluded his speech by pleading the lawyers that it will be better that the visiting time will be extended to half an hour, because they're only allowed for a very little time, and this will be a great help for them. And he was thanking again all who are taking part in the release of his son. In short, thank you. Next.
Santosh, is in short, just a clarification. In fact, what has happened is the family has not been given a chance to meet Ahnaf for about 8 months, and mother has not seen the child for about 8 months since September last year.
Yes,
and the phone calls last only about 2.5 minutes. So that's why in my letter I strongly pointed out the rights that the detainee has, yes, and an international convention that is applicable to the detainee rights of the detainee. And these
hello,
it's a demand that you should make that he should be given access to the world, outside world. So expressly recognized. If you have seen my letter, and he should be given all his rights to write, keep them in safe custody, and his literary creation should be given to him once he leave, when he is going to leave. And so these are rights, and the assumption of innocence is there, and no torture or inhuman degrading treatment could not be inflicted upon him. So these are his rights, and no forced confession could be taken. So I have insisted on these things and these rights to be ensured, and also that Ahnaf should be given access to the family and to his lawyers, and to call the family at least 20 minutes, 15 to 20 minutes, with a video call facility. The family should see the child and to see how he is, how his health is, because we don't know when video is switched off, and when he's called over the phone, on what circumstances he is calling the family. We don't know. We don't know how what he has, whether he is able to express his suffering, his grievances openly and without fear. That is completely because he is under police custody, and he is restrained to speak. So that's why I have pointed out these things, and I hope to insist on that and to follow up and to pressure.
Yes, thank you. So that shows that how deteriorated the situation and how horrendous the situation is. Yes, along with the legal fighting, we had to go along with other human rights activities and actions, and in any form that we could do that. Yeah. Is any other opinions? If not, we can conclude now. The time has, we have arrived the time to conclude. So if there's no other opinions or questions. Okay, I think we will conclude the meeting. Thank you very much for the participation of the speakers firstly, and all the participants. I think we can meet in another session very soon. Thank you. I will thank you all in behalf of the Minority Report. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jazakumullah.